Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews bringing you the next episode of Review Recall. This will cover as many albums as I could listen to in the month of September. I'm sorry this episode is so delayed. There is just so much being released right now and I'm trying to keep on track with it. It's very overwhelming. So not every single album made it into this video. There are going to be some that are unfortunately delayed to the October video. But we got a lot to talk about today. Let's dive in. This could have easily been a top country album of the year contender if it was cut in half. It has some fantastic tracks, but also 20 songs leads way to a bit of filler, which is such a shame since Mitchell Tenpenny has been quite the dark horse for modern country for me. Even with it being a bit bloated, I still think it's a great album. Damn it, who allowed this to be so good? Have I just been missing out on Youngblood this entire time because of crappy critical reception? I think this album is pretty great. Reminds me a bit of older 5 Seconds of Summer, which is one of my favorite bands, especially that era of them too. So this clicked with me pretty quickly. I will say though, a lot of these tracks have extremely similar melodies, bordering on the microscopic level, and while that melody in question is good, I just would have preferred some more differentiation. Aside from that, I like this. Definitely not for everybody, but I'm happy enough with it. This album didn't really offer a whole lot to the grand hip-hop ethos, but it does provide some decent energy and upbeat deliveries. Probably would be great for a gym/workout playlist, but I don't see why you'd choose this to listen to over like 75% of the hip-hop released this year. So before this month, I had never listened to any Osees album. However, thanks to the recommendation from one of my Discord mods, I have now heard 3, including this one. And I just gotta say, this band is so audacious. It's one of the coolest things I've been privy to listen to. This latest album of theirs takes from garage punk and noise rock, and that energy still manages to be catchy and memorable. Barely surpassing 20 minutes, it is a blast to listen to. You know, definitely an improvement from Yeat's album earlier in the year, Too Alive. Always love seeing artists dabble in different production and genre choices, and most of the ones executed here are tasteful. It's not the most memorable project at all, but it's certainly the most I've enjoyed Yeat, so I'm excited to see if he continues on this road. Very sweet and simple, folky indie pop record. Not an album that's going to blow your mind by any means, but if you want a comforting listen going into fall, this will definitely suffice. Freddie Gibbs kinda killed it in this one. Very fun listen with bouncy flows, solid production. I haven't heard much of his solo stuff, mostly the collabs with Alchemist and Madlib, but honestly, this might be better than both of those. Very nice stuff here. It's probably one of the weaker 127 albums. Starts off pretty strong with the first 2 tracks, but then afterwards it just feels like mostly whatever until the back end picks it up right around Playback. Still makes for an enjoyable listen though, but I'd just rather listen to the last album sticker over this. Never been too huge on Jon Pardi's style of country, but he is a big name, so I figured I'd give it a listen to see if anything changed. I've been growing on modern country a bit more recently, so I had semi-high hopes, and it still doesn't do much for me. Bit of a slog, overly repetitive, inane lyrics. It sounds fine enough, and that prevents me from outright disliking it, but that's really all it gave me at the end of the day. Brief 3-track EP from this 2017 XXL freshman, and it's a decent enough listen. Don't care for the heavy, robotic auto-tune lathered carelessly here, but the beats here have a good bounce and make for a solid enough listen. This still has that fire that Slipknot is known for, but I do agree with the consensus that this is one of their more straightforward and kind of forgettable releases so far. I don't think there's anything outright bad on here, but I wouldn't give this to someone starting out with the band or even a longtime fan of the earlier material. And just a month after Youngboy defied all the odds with the miraculously consistent Last Sly Meadow 30-track Goliath, he shoots himself in the foot with his most annoying and boring project I've heard from him. What a quick 180. You know, the musical side of it is fine, often pretty good, but man, why does Rob Flynn sound like the whiniest, edgiest kid at 55 years old? These lyrics are just not enjoyable to listen to and don't make me want to revisit this. I've seen a few people thrash this newest Bladee album here. Personally, I still really enjoyed it. It's got some fantastic production, catchy flows and melodies. It doesn't have the most standout characteristics to me in Blade's discography, but I still enjoyed it a good bit. Twice remain one of the most consistent K-pop acts working today with another great project here. This EP has great vocals, great production, catchy hooks. It's really all you can ask for in the genre. I don't think it's top tier though. The tracks do become a bit thin near the end, but for what it is, it's still quite good. If all existing signs point to this being Ozzy's final album, I'd say he ended on a good note. Great performances, great guitar work, feels like a bit of a victory lap record. Not on the level of his classics, but certainly one of his best in the modern era. A decent listen here, taking influences from the rising force that is pop punk and emo pop, will definitely satisfy that crowd. I do think it's a bit too long, begins to drag and lose its identity about 3/4 of the way through. If this was cut to a 10-track album, it'd be pretty great. As it stands, it's good. Now, I'm not going to say too much about this one. I know very little of Bjork's discography, so I know I'm not the most educated critic to express my thoughts on this, but I thought this was an extremely fun listen. Playing with a bit of chamber music, clarinets, it almost has like a fantasy quality to me, and that style is very engaging. It's beautiful chaos, accented by gorgeous vocals. I really like this. I can't wait to eventually familiarize myself with Bjork's discography down the road. Damn, this is just a blast to put on and vibe to. How could you complain about one of the most hyped up and consistent hip-hop producers just sticking to what he does and making a beat tape? This is a home run by design alone, but with its execution, it knocks it out of the park. Pretty good singer-songwriter record here. I'm not fawning over it as much as the rest of the internet seems to be, but it sounds pleasant enough and the lyricism is thoughtful and endearing. It is what you would expect from a Shway SZN album, same kind of pop, reggae, rap, R&B fusion he's been doing for a little over a decade now. The features all blend in well and nothing stands out as bad. I do think this would have been more appropriate as a summer release, like around June or July. The seasonal bliss is kind of over, so I don't get too much out of this, but maybe keep this in mind for next summer. Good listen. Just a really good indie rock record here. Has some more bold experiments, but is overall an inoffensive listen and makes for a fun time. Check it out if you're curious. One of the band's best efforts in recent memory. If you like Cudi's sound in any capacity, you'll probably get something out of this, but at least for me, who likes the more upbeat and catchy R&B rap fusion he brings, this was very underwhelming. Had some highlights. I especially like the 2 Chainz collab, but if this is the so-called swan song of his career, bit of a disappointing release to end such an illustrious career on. Very solid country album here. This is the kind of stuff I like. Not overly polished, not meandering bro country, just some nice, easy on the ears, catchy as fuck modern country. If you're tired of the monotony of country today, give this a listen. You might just enjoy it. I am a little surprised with this one, honestly, mostly because I think it's one of NAV's better releases. Didn't come out of this feeling bored or sleepy at all like I typically do with NAV's music. It's still not great, but I'm honestly looking forward to whatever could be next. NAV's 2 latest releases, this and Emergency Tsunami, I think are his best projects by a mile. So if he can keep going on this path, we might see something genuinely amazing from him sooner rather than later. And I hope he does, with this project being a stepping stone to that. This was apparently a more risky album for the band. This sounds like the most sunshiny, conservative country record I've heard all year. Maybe I'm just not that in touch with Little Big Town, but safe to say this album did not live up to expectations for me at all. One of Cameron's better projects in his later years, A-Trak's production suits him nicely, the features are pretty consistent, and Cameron himself exudes this wise charisma that's pretty cool to hear. Good hip-hop project here, check it out. The fact that this album cover looks like a shitty, curated Spotify playlist should have been a sign, because that's how the album sounds too. More like the hardest part is not liking it because it's a good album. God, what the fuck is wrong with me? Furious Styles really brought like 85% of the underground rappers I enjoy onto one EP that is unsurprisingly consistent with varying charismas and hard-hitting beats courtesy of the host himself. I like it. It's fine. I think the buttoned up and proper folk country fusion here doesn't properly emphasize the darker lyrical content. I think this would have benefited from a rougher, almost outlaw country sound, but that's just me. The album as a whole is kind of just okay. So Ari Lennox actually released 2 projects this month, both of them being pretty different, so I figured why not cover them in the same section, so here we are. Starting with the Away Message EP, which is an extremely solid mini R&B project. Not going to blow your mind by any means unless you've been living under a rock for the genre, but an all-around good listen. However, the album that dropped a week later, Age, Sex, Location, is genuinely amazing. Fantastic production, gorgeous vocals, one of Ari's best bodies of work to date. Check that one out in particular. Yeah, one of the best K-pop albums I've heard this year. This was damn fun. Punchy, energetic, charismatic. I love this. Billy Idol is back with another little EP here, and it's a fun listen. He still sounds great vocally over these more raucous rock instrumentals. Doesn't really hold a candle to the material released during his heyday, but if you need some confirmation that Billy's still got it, this is a prime example. Now, I'm not the most familiar with Mach-Hommy, although I have seen a lot of praise thrown at him, especially for his Pray for Haiti album, and after listening, it's solid, but not a fantastic record. I just think there's better hip-hop out there this year. Definitely not bad by any means, but I don't have any reason to revisit this. I kind of wish I had more to talk about with this one. Like, it's fine. The synth-pop approach the band takes is good, but there are some baffling choices near the back half that kill the enjoyment for me in some instances. Bit of a shame, really. This was a disappointing record here. Really expected more than this shallow UK pop rap with minimal drill elements here and there. Does not leave much memorable in the long run aside from some welcome personal lyrics, but I'm not crazy about it in the long run. And Weezer does it yet again with another catchy dose of power pop and pop rock. I'm very impressed with how well this season series is going so far, and also shocked how wild of a high and low roller coaster the band's career has just been recently. They are killing it now, and I'm hoping winter can bring it all home. Jessie's last album, Before Love Came to Kill Us, was a welcome improvement to her sound, but then she just goes right back to the same things I disliked about her on this one. Nasally, shouty, squawky vocals. When they're not leaning into that hideous side, they're mostly inoffensive, which is the better side of her range to me. The instrumentals are not interesting and sound like the bulk of R&B releasing today. Like, why would you choose to listen to this over, gee, I don't know, even that Ari Lennox album I just talked about not long ago? This record was pretty forgettable, and when it wasn't being forgettable, it was being actively annoying. Kane Brown has always been one of my favorites of the superstars of country, but he never put out an album I really enjoyed, and the length of this new one daunted me a little bit. Thankfully, this was that lightning in a bottle album I've been waiting for him to deliver, taking from a bunch of different surrounding genres and fusing them all together with an emotional current that keeps the album captivating. Not my favorite country album released this year, but definitely one worth checking out. A solid cloud rap listen here. Definitely wouldn't do anything for you if you aren't already in love with the genre in some capacity, but for those of you who are in the know, I'd recommend checking it out. A pleasant and intricate dream/sophistopop listen. I tend to get tired of that sound over extended periods, so an EP is a perfect amount for my dosages of this sound, and I enjoyed it. Second beat tape I'm covering here, and this one is by the same guy who worked with Chef, who I reviewed on the channel, so I was pretty excited to dive into this, and while I didn't enjoy this as much as I did Louis, this was still a sweet, comforting listen with some features sprinkled here and there to break it up. All around great listen. I haven't heard too much of Megadeth's material. I know the recent stuff gets a bit of hate, this one included, but I liked it good enough. Maybe that's just the inexperienced listener in me not knowing the classic albums fully, but I thought it was good. Definitely had some clunkers, especially Junkie, which was a really boring song. But aside from that, I don't know, I liked it. It was an all-around fun listen, had some nice energy, charismatic MC, but man, this guy really sounds like West Side Gun, like it's almost uncanny. I know Mayhem Lauren was around before West Side Gun, and I don't know if he's always sounded like this because I haven't heard many Mayhem Lauren releases, especially the earlier stuff, and instead maybe I should be making the opposite comparison, but the similarities are striking. Doesn't mean it's a bad album by any means. I like West Side Gun, so it didn't bother me too much. If you're into that Griselda sound, check it out. Really like this hip-hop album here. Definitely the better of the two Alchemist-produced rap albums I've heard this year. Pretty abstract take on the kind of boom-bap, jazzy hip-hop style. Don't really have too much else to say. Probably won't be rap album of the year, but I get how it could be for others. Bit of a stylistic deviation from Midnight Samurai, a much poppier listen than anything he's put out before, but to my surprise, he handles the new genre pretty well. Few zippy synths, slight drum and bass influence, maybe a bit of hyperpop as well. It's not bad. This is like poppier Black MIDI. Same kind of weirdly melodic yet controlled chaos, but a bit more synthy, a bit more bass. Pleasantly surprised with this. Only 20 minutes? Check this out. Daya deciding to do some retro-flavored synth-pop on this latest EP of hers, and only manages to blend in with the crowd instead of stand out. Seriously, the R&B suits her way more. Just saying. Not head over heels for this new Lay EP at all. The rap beats feel really thin, and the only real notable track is the single, which is pretty catchy. But aside from that, it's not a listen that will resonate with you at all. Damn, this is such a fiery record here. Some great bangers, very captivating and smooth MC behind the wheel, cranking out some lyrically dense material. Just another reason why I love being a part of this underground scene. Give this a listen. Probably the best Nina Nesbitt album I've heard so far. Way stronger emphasis on catchy melodies, good hooks, all around sounds great. But as a full listen, this doesn't quite feel like a cohesive album rather than just a collection of tracks. I know she has a lot of talent and the individual songs display that. Maybe she's just not an album person, which is a bit of a shame. I understand it's like the thing now to clown on DaBaby, his allegations, no one showing up to his shows, one of the hardest fall-offs of a mainstream rapper in a long time. But let's not forget, this is one of the most exciting rappers of the late 2010s, so despite all that, I still went into this with high expectations. And yeah, it's another pretty mediocre project from him. It's just nothing new. It's the same exact bass pounds and the same typical charisma, but the problem is he does more singing on this one and it's very hit or miss. I just feel like he'll really have to change something up about the next release to truly regain a spot in the mainstream, because if he keeps going down this path, he's not gonna go anywhere. Again, not bad, just boring. Pretty simple K-pop EP here. A bit of a shame since Xiumin is my EXO bias. I kind of expected something more with it, but it's still alright. I was just hoping for something a bit more significant, I guess. I've heard about this band through a specific member of my Discord server. I haven't checked anything else out from them, so I went into this completely blind. And this record is such a metamorphic journey. Touches of lo-fi, emo, indie-tronica, dream pop, and slowcore are very prevalent on this. At least for my liking, it's a bit long, maybe cut out 2 tracks or so, but despite that, this is an interesting listen, but I had a blast with that. If you're into any of those specific genres I mentioned, try it out. This is definitely the most out there project SZN has released. In some instances, I wouldn't even call this hip-hop anymore, even going as far left as genres like ambient and no wave, especially for that last leg. It may not be my style personally, but it is a fascinating album and one that I think deserves to be checked out. Kelsea Ballerini has always leaned way further into pop than country for me, and this is just more of her sound. Definitely has some fun and catchy moments, extremely sterile, save for a few exceptions. As a pop listener, it works for me. If you want an actual country album, look literally anywhere else. I've heard worse albums this year that were way shorter than this. John's still got a great voice and shows in the fact that this is the best thing he's done in the past 5 years. Don't let that runtime sway you. This is pretty good. Nice listen here. Feels like a necessary progression for Sarah's career and made for some decent, bubbly yet hard-hitting pop tunes. Not going to be a favorite by any means, but still a fun listen. I had a fantastic time with this record. Balances the line pretty well between some catchy, poppier rap tropes while it's sharpened to that emo edge, and I still have a bit of soft spot for both of those genres, so mixing them together was bound to work. It's a good enough listen, but it's probably the most nothing Shiraz Lane album yet. The band can still play pretty well, and Hans's vocals are good and expressive for the most part, but I just feel like everything out of this album I could get on their last album, Carnival Days, or even the Vibration 1 EP. Plus, why was Broken Into Pieces not on this album? That track is phenomenal. So many bizarre choices and executions. Thankfully, the end result isn't bad, but it's certainly not their best. You know, it's fine. There's nothing mind-blowing on here. It's the same East Coast hip-hop beats, dime a dozen flows. It doesn't sound bad by any means, but if you want better hip-hop, try something else. This is the latest EP from this American folk pop duo, and it's a decent enough listen. Reminds me of some of the more indie Canadian pop artists I like to indulge in every now and then. Good vocals, crisp production, I like it. While I haven't been the biggest fan of BLACKPINK, there is some of their best material on this album here. I don't love every track here at all, but some of the earlier cuts pretty much carry the album. It balances to an all-around good listen. You know, it's better than Wi-Fi's last project from the previous year. Better flows, better energy, but man, there was still a decent amount of nothingness on here. I guess we'll see if he ever matches Ethernet 2 again, but I'm not too positive for that. Really solid EP here, fun pop tunes, feels a bit more experimental than her debut, which I like. I think she could really excel in that regard, but it's still a fun listen. Probably the most surprising Pierre Bourne album I've ever heard. Instead of just living in the trap scene for an entire hour, this takes from R&B, some pop tropes as well. Even if I think it was a bit long, it's a commendable release, no doubt. Alrighty folks, and that is going to do it for this really long and delayed episode of Review Recall. Thank you all so much for watching. If you made it this far, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and go check out my social medias. Links will all be in the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.